We welcome you to another edition of Being Well Informed. My name is Claudia Barber, and I am your host today, and so happy to have with me today on Being Well Informed the illustrious Mr. Vincent Leggett. And I just greet you with special greetings because you are part of history. Blacks of the Chesapeake, Carr's Beach, Sparrow's Beach. A lot of that is you. Why?
Well, one of the things, Professor Barber, is that for the last 30 years, the Blacks of the Chesapeake has been documenting the contributions of African Americans to the maritime and seafood industry. So often when one picks up a book or a magazine on the Chesapeake Bay and start flipping through the pages, very seldom they see people of color.
Mhm.
If we are portrayed, the caption just says crab picker or oyster shucker, no other attribution or agency. If you turn one more page, and if it's a white waterman, it talks about who his mother was, who his father was, how many years they've been in the business, their ups and downs. And so I decided that rather than just muse over what I call erasure, begin to try to tell some of our own stories. And yes, we were the backbone of the seafood and maritime industry on the Chesapeake Bay as crab pickers and oyster shuckers. But what people did not know and what was not portrayed is that we were owners of seafood processing plants. We were boat builders. We were sail makers. We were involved in all aspects of the maritime and seafood industry, and we did not get recognition. From that point, I began to try to show extraordinary things we were doing as African Americans on the Chesapeake. And that's what brought me to Carr's and Sparrow's beaches. This was two beaches that operated in Annapolis from the 1920s to the 1970s. But it all started before then when their father, Mr. Fred Carr, cobbled together 180 acres of land directly on the Chesapeake Bay that he farmed and made available to church groups and social groups from the 1905, 1908. And in the 1920s, he divided this 180 acres up into four parcels for his four daughters because he was concerned that after his demise, someone may wrestle that state away from the girls. And so while he was still living and had strength in his limbs, he subdivided the property. He also had a son that he felt was capable of finding his own way. But as old folks say, he wanted to leave the girls with a dowry that would make them attractive to any suitors because they were landowners on the Chesapeake
Wow.
Bay. And it
Impressive.
was, yes. And from that beginning, they established two beaches, the two sisters, Florence Carr Sparrows and Elizabeth Carr Smith. And one of the things I would like to note that during this period of segregation and state-sponsored segregation, by the way, is that many of the other beaches, colored-only beaches around the Chesapeake Bay, were government-owned beaches.
Hmm.
These two enterprising women that established two of the most fabulous beaches on the Chesapeake Bay. And that's what we have been highlighting and amplifying over the last 15 years and longer, just this remarkable feat during the period of segregation.
So this whole Blacks of the Chesapeake, is it an organization? Is it just a group of people? Or what does it entail?
The Blacks of the Chesapeake began as a labor of love and as a project in 1984. Then it evolved into a nonprofit foundation, and we were chartered in 1999 as an operating foundation. So often when people hear words like the Ford Foundation or the McKinsey Foundation or the Rockefeller Foundation. Those are foundations that give out money. We are an operating foundation, and that's how we're chartered with the Internal Revenue Department as an operating foundation governed by a board of directors. And the four core areas of our work is education, history, culture, and the environment. And all of the projects, we write books, we do documentary films, we do field trips. So that is how we're set up. That was our nascent beginning as a project, and then it just crossed over from a project into a full-fledged foundation to make us eligible for grants and other benefits operating under and as a 501c3 operating foundation.
But you also were involved in this new state park near Carr's Beach. Tell us more about that.
Well, 15 years ago, I began working with the owners of this 5-acre tract. As I indicated, that initially Mr. Fred Carr amassed close to 180 acres on the Chesapeake Bay. He subdivided it into 4 parcels, 25, 30 acres each, more or less, and then his home place. And 15 years ago, a developer from Baltimore, Mr. Willie Adams and Theo Rogers, they were developers out of Baltimore, Adams and Rogers Development Corporation, held the last 5 remaining acres in a trust. And 15 years ago, I was represented by the Venable law firm out of Baltimore. They still represent me today. And we began entering into negotiations with Mr. Rogers and the trust to give us a limited use operating agreement. Their plan was to eventually build 30 to 40 townhouses on the property. And this was in 2007. In 2008, the bottom dropped out of the real estate market. So nothing was moving during that period. And my plan was to get a limited use agreement to utilize this 5-acre waterfront area to operate the Blacks of the Chesapeake's educational, historical, cultural, and environmental programs. And so that's where this saga started 15 years ago. In the last, since 2015 or 16, the overseers of the trust began to try to revive their programs, and at one point they had to annex the property from the county to the city that had sewer capacity, school capacity, adequate facilities, ordinances, and those things. In addition, they had to go through a very tough subdivision process in the city, looking at density and critical areas and setbacks and buffers and so forth. And more recently, they started moving that project through the city. And our partners, the city of Annapolis, the Chesapeake Conservancy, and others, proffered a proposal to the trustees of the 5 acres. Would they consider us preserving that 5-acre parcel as a conservation through a conservation easement? And the developer said he would entertain it if we could get the price right and set some timelines for the transaction to take place. It just couldn't go on and on and on, but he would give us an opportunity to purchase it if we could do it within a time frame that was mutually agreed upon. And then the whole team kind of got to work, and at the end of the day, the property transferred at $6.4 million. And myself, representing the Blacks of the Chesapeake, was really one of the lead organizations, and particularly by being an NGO or non-government entity, everyone indicated, and I do believe made a difference in the project moving forward versus the city government or the county government or the federal government, because it was an African American heritage site.
And where does that stand today?
Today is that the $6.4 million was raised through various government sources. The deed transferred to the city of Annapolis on August 12th. The Blacks of the Chesapeake has a major stewardship role in interpreting the history and the culture, not only of Carr's and Sparrow's Beach, but African American life along the bay.
You're talking about August 2022.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes. It's 2022. I think that's a little over a month ago.
Yes.
That the property actually transferred, and we had a ceremony memorializing the transfer of the deed. But equally important and amazing, working through our U.S. Senator Benjamin Carton, he also joined in the effort from the federal level, and we secured $2 million in federally directed spending to look at infrastructure and to develop a master plan for the park.
Where do you see this going in terms of the park? Do you see statues there? Do you see an amusement park? Do you see an extension of a rail system? What?
Well, what I would say is that the major fund source that we use was through a conservation funding source called Program Open Space, that's really designed as a conservation and preservation strategy. We placed an African American heritage preservation overlay on top of a traditional land conservation project, which was really a sea change in the regional conservation movement. Equally, it was a sea change because the project was spearheaded by NGO, a non-government organization, as one of the main leads of the project as it winded its way through the Senate, Maryland Senate, the House of Delegates, the Board of Public Works, that to a great extent, the Blacks of the Chesapeake was the face of the project, because it was just very important for myself and the community to demonstrate that we have the intellect and have the agency to interpret and tell our own story through our own voices. Heretofore, that I would say was a rarity, particularly for NGOs or community-based organizations to be in that type of position.
What was Governor Hogan's role? Mayor of Annapolis, Gavin Buckley, and County Executive Stuart Pittman's role?
We really was all in lockstep, because the primary funding source for the application was really funding through, with the governor's office, Maryland Department of Natural Resources, and the city of Annapolis contributed to the purchase using local open space funding. The county executive contributed to the project using local open space funding, and the Department of Natural Resource contributed money as well, what they call stateside funding. For me, the Blacks of the Chesapeake also received a $1.2 million grant through the governor's office, the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, toward the purchase of the property. And again, for me, that was a high water mark and a point of significance for the African American community.
Here's some history that I wanted to share. Let's see if we can get this in.
Green Book won big at last night's Oscar, scoring Best Picture. But before it was big, it was already shedding light on the adversities that African Americans faced during the restrictive era of segregation and Jim Crow. In Maryland, beaches like Ocean City and Sandy Point were for whites only. But a set of African American sisters turned beachfront land in Annapolis into more than just a listing in the Green Book, which was a real thing. They made it a safe retreat for Black Americans to thrive.
When I was growing up, Ocean City was segregated. I remember being in the water and there was a rope there with balls on it, and you knew that you couldn't go beyond the rope because on the other side of the rope was the white area.
And it was just something about whether it's the water fountains, the beach, the playgrounds, the libraries, the schools, there's something very humiliating about seeing the white-only sign or the colored-only sign.
I was probably 8 years old. I didn't know that I couldn't go to these other places.
There was a recent movie called The Green Book that kind of outlined a lot of these different facilities where it was safe for people of color to go. Well, Carr's and Sparrow's Beach were one of those places. Here was the 1930s. You had two African-American females that owned acreage on the Chesapeake Bay.
It was a source of confidence and empowerment. It's history that many of our people haven't seen.
To see African Americans prevailing against all odds, being educated, business people, hiring people, adding to the tax rolls. They hired many of the local school teachers during this period of segregation where colored teachers were paid less than white teachers.
Carr's Beach was not a confined environment, so it had the air of a festival, so people felt free.
The slogan was black feet and white sand. I mean, that was just so empowering, and no one could tell you to sit down or stand up. You could just come out and enjoy the Chesapeake Bay, enjoy the music, enjoy the food, enjoy the fellowship.
Some of the entertainers that came to Carr's Beach at that time were like Count Basie, Ella Fitzgerald, Chick Webb, Duke Ellington,
Ray Charles, James Brown, Sarah Vaughan.
Just to see people of color in charge, running something, was just very empowering to a downtrodden people.
I do feel a little sad that some of these beaches no longer exist, and I understand why, because when integration came, we decided to test all the things that we couldn't go to. They played such an important role, and as long as we don't forget that they existed, we've had some hard times, but we are survivors.
Even with all of those obstacles, as a community, African Americans found ways to prevail, how to strive, how to empower others, how to maximize opportunity. And so I think that message is just as relevant today as it was in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s.
What we can do is tell the story of American music right from this latitude and longitude. Part of the concept is to have a very robust online presence to collect photographs, to capture oral histories, to develop curriculum guides to support this whole body of work, again, around education, around history, around culture, around the environment. But also, Professor Barber, is that over the last 30 years, there are a number of facilities and institutions in Annapolis, Anne Arundel, around the country that have a picture of Carr's Beach on the wall, or push a button and watch James Brown dance. And my concept is, let's connect those off-site facilities with the authentic space, with the dirt, with the Chesapeake Bay in the view shed where you can see the seagulls, you can smell the salt air. And even people like Smokey Robinson, he was recently over to Berksmere and was given a talk and reflected on his time being at Annapolis at the beaches.
Okay.
So I don't think I could have a Smokey Robinson concert there, but I could have him come down and cut a ribbon and tell a story. And we might have to have the concert at Merlin Hall or the Rams Head or the Navy Academy Stadium. So again, just trying ways that we can connect all of this together and having access to an authentic space.
Do you have a website?
Yes. You can just Google blacksofthechesapeake.org. Will get you to our website, and it will tell more about our projects, our programs, some of our key partners. Even tonight, Professor Barber, that the Maryland Public Television and PBS are running 2 documentary films. One ran last Tuesday called Visions of Harriet Tubman. Tonight on MPT, Maryland Public TV, and public broadcast stations around the country, they'll be running one called Becoming Frederick Douglass. Because of my work, because of the Blacks of the Chesapeake work, we've always lifted up Frederick Douglass as well as Harriet Tubman as bookends of the Blacks of the Chesapeake. Both have salt water running through their veins. Miss Tubman was born in Bucktown in Dorchester County. Frederick Bailey Washington Douglass was born in Talbot County, right outside of Easton. And my specialty, my seminal research project is called Chesapeake Underground, where we have documented and studied the extent to which the Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries were used as a part of the Underground Railroad. And it's just really an honor to work with Emmy-nominated and Grammy-nominated filmmakers Stanley Nelson and Nicole London were the producers, and to work with them. And I really feel, I'll say, special and privileged to be a on-camera subject matter expert and social commentator in both films.
Marvelous. Bravo. Bravo. So
I would tell you, that's coming a long way for a country boy out of East Baltimore.
But you know, there's so much rich history here that you're sharing with us. And so I guess it's really important. What are next steps and where do we go from here? You know, how can the community get involved in developing of this new state park that is near Carr's Beach?
Well, what I would say is that through the Blacks of the Chesapeake, for sure, we have membership programs. I'm working with a number of community-based people on the project that over the 35 or 40 years that I've had at Blacks of the Chesapeake, I've always worked in a collaborative fashion. And it's even more important to continue that collaborative model, that we have a big tent, we have a diverse tent. But one of the things that we are clear on is that we do have the intellect and the resources in our community to shape the narrative, to interpret our history, and just combat erasure. Because at the same time, Professor, that due to sea level rise and climate change, the shoreline is vanishing, but our storytellers, our truth keepers, the elders in our community are also vanishing. And we need to redouble our efforts to capture their stories, rescue their artifacts. Because so often in the whole conservation community, there's been a historical air that if George Washington didn't sleep there, it's not important. Or that our domiciles did not have architectural significance. What I promote and Blacks of the Chesapeake promote is the cultural heritage, the impact, the survival and accomplishments against odds. Stories that in our community are significant, stories that need to be shared with young people and not so young people, to let everyone know that we are achievers, we are high achievers, and just so often in the day's news cycle, as they say in the industry, if it bleeds, it leads. But how about telling more positive stories about how we not only have overcome, but overcoming?
That's wonderful. And I thank you so much, Vincent Leggett, for being a part of our broadcast today. It was so thrilling to learn much about the Blacks of the Chesapeake and progress that is continuing. Thank you again for helping us be well informed.
Thank you.
Welcome you to another edition of Being Well Informed. My name is Claudia Barber, and I am the host of this podcast and television program designed to enlighten you. And we are pleased to have as our very special guest on this fine afternoon, President Kurt Schmoke, who is president of the University of Baltimore. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Being Well Informed.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation. Glad to see you after all these years.
After all these years, the very first time I interviewed you as a guest, you were running for state's attorney.
Oh, that's many decades and more hair at the time.
Yes, yes. And actually, it was around 88, because I had just passed the bar. Ah. And so it's been so long, but good to see you. So we fast forward 30 years later, and you are the president of the University of Baltimore.
Right. Very pleased to be here. And yes, I guess I could say I'm still a recovering politician, but I'm enjoying the life in the academy.
Wonderful, wonderful. Glad you were able to join us for this edition of Being Well Informed. And we want to learn more about student loan forgiveness and how it impacts the education industry as well as students. So what can you say to people who want to go to college and they basically say, I can't afford it?
Well, it depends on where you want to go. There are a lot of choices. I know that if you're looking to go to an Ivy League school, you're talking about just tuition cost alone upwards to $75,000 a year. If you are looking to public universities, again, you have a range. I like to let people know, particularly parents, know that there's a wide range of options here. In Maryland, for example, if you'd like to go to public university, I explained to many students the option of doing 2 years at a community college, then finishing up 2 years at a public 4-year college. That dramatically reduces your cost. On the other hand, if you're just looking for the prestige value of a named private university, then you're talking, I'll just give you an example. In our area, Johns Hopkins tuition at the undergraduate level is around $60,000, and some other, Loyola around around $53,000. So it's a range. University of Baltimore tuition for a full-time undergraduate is about $9,000 dollars. And if that person decides to come and is eligible for the federal Pell Grant, Pell Grant is around $6,800. So there's a gap between the Pell Grant and the tuition. Fortunately for us, we have donors who a scholarship program that closes that gap. But for many students, you know, 9,000 almost as far away to reach as 60,000. So we have to have many good scholarship programs in order to assist them. But a great deal of options in higher education. But you're right in focusing in on the really exorbitant cost of going to a private university right now.
But we look at students that are probably in their teens going into their 20s, and they're saying $60,000 to go to one semester, is, if that's the
that's an annual.
That's an annual. Okay.
Yeah.
An annual cost to go.
Right.
To,
and that's just that's just tuition.
That's just
tuition. That didn't get into room, board, and other expenses
and other things.
Yeah.
Like a car and all that. For some,
athletic fees, lab fees, things of that nature, cafeteria and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there are full range of other costs that can drive it up above $70,000.
Okay, so some people can say, well, you know, $70,000, I could buy maybe a portion of a house, or $70,000 I could buy a car, or $70,000 I could choose a trade school. So, you know, the cost wise is pretty astronomical. And I note that only because when you go to the White House website where President Biden has provided a fact sheet, he emphasizes the fact that education cost has tripled, and that the cost at both public and private has tripled over the years. It sounds like a lot of that's true.
The public side, though, has another wrinkle to it, and that is when state legislators started to reduce the amount of state money going to public universities, then the public universities responded by increasing tuition. But as long as state government was giving substantial amount of money to the public universities, they could keep those tuition costs low. So I'll just give you an example. The University of Virginia, which is an outstanding public university, used to get substantial amounts of money, 30–40% of their operating costs from state government. That's been reduced to around 11% now. So in order to keep high quality, then they just increase tuition. So you've got some outstanding public universities, you know, like the University of Virginia and the University of Michigan, that have dramatically increased their tuition. Fortunately, again, in Maryland, the state government has really been a good partner with the public universities. So our outstanding flagship university at College Park it has not had to increase their tuition in as dramatic a fashion as some of the other ones that I named, Virginia and Michigan. Certainly they've increased, that's for sure, but not the enormous increase that we've seen at some public universities.
Thank you for bringing that perspective, because a lot of folks really aren't well informed about that component of the legislature and their involvement and impact on this whole situation of educational costs.
That's right. You know, I think often people just look to what's happening at the university. You know, some universities, you know, have great dormitories that are like hotels with all kinds of amenities, and that adds to the cost. They have athletic facilities that basically you know almost are at professional level. That too adds to the cost. So there are a lot of things that if you just looked at the university, you'd say, oh, well, there's my tuition money going into all that. But there are some other factors involved, and certainly government has a role to play in terms of its relationship with the universities. More government support, less need to increase the tuitions at the public university. The privates, very different. They count primarily on big endowments in order to kind of reduce the cost or to offer more scholarships. But if you're a private university without a big endowment, then the only way you continue to operate at a high quality is to raise tuition. And that's why we're seeing these, thousands of dollars that are go into tuition increases.
Well, when parents make decisions or they agree with their daughter or son on where to go to college or and so on, there's a reason though people choose the private school route or the private college route, the HBCU route.
Correct.
And in your particular situation, the fact that you attended Harvard University, finished Harvard University, and there's a lot more of private Ivy League, Holyoke college in your history. And I'm thinking that it still was extremely beneficial to your career.
Oh, sure. It certainly, I was a Yale undergraduate, Harvard Law School, and it clearly opened an awful lot of doors for me. But at the time that I went to as an undergraduate, that's all the way back to 5 decades ago in 1967 is when I entered university. At that time, government subsidies to all universities were pretty significant. I think my last year in college, the tuition was just $4,000 when you look at it now. But the other thing that universities offered at the time, and some still do, but not too many, is that if you went there and you had a lot of student debt, if you went into certain professions like teaching, that in the public school system, then you could get your debt either dramatically reduced or eliminated if you went into that kind of public service. We don't have that many programs like that now. If we did, we would benefit tremendously, not only for the student, but for the communities. Because when you think about the number of school systems that are looking around now to fill vacancies in their teaching corps, and they have to go overseas to offer job opportunities, we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot by not having those types of programs that would help reduce student debt and increase the quality of the classrooms that we have with a real diverse group of teachers coming into that profession.
I remember teachings. If you teached in a low-income community, you could have a certain portion of your loan forgiven.
That's correct.
And you're
not all states offer that anymore. And
I see.
That's the type of program that would help a great deal. Could be teaching, or it could be other public service professions. You imagine the getting more college graduates in police work, because that has been shown to reduce the number of police abuse cases by increasing the education level of your police force. Study after study has shown that. So it would be great to see more attractions for people to go into public service, with the trade-off being a reduction in their student debt.
So then we take a look and examine closely President Biden's initiative, and that is $10,000 forgiven. Is
Right.
that helpful?
Again, it would for a student coming to the University of Baltimore, where the tuition is, for a full-time undergraduate, a little under $9,000, that can be a big help. For someone going to some of the private institutions where tuition alone is in excess of $50,000, $60,000, it provides some help, but not a great deal of relief. But more and more of our students are in the public universities rather than the private. So it does provide some relief to people who have been burdened by a heavy student debt. I believe that a better approach would be to increase the Pell Grant. The Pell Grant that the federal government offers, that's not a loan, that's an absolute grant to a student that they don't have to repay. But that right now is just under $7,000. If they doubled the Pell Grant, I think that probably would have more of an impact on increasing college enrollment and participation, and also assuring that students wouldn't have huge debt at the end of that 4 or 5 year process.
Then there's also concern about, let's say, students who currently still have their debt from years ago, and they consolidated their loans.
Correct.
The forgiveness program does not kind of fit that, does it?
Right, but you're right. There are some people, and that's why the whole initiative by the president remains controversial, because there's some people that have consolidated debt who have worked second jobs, third jobs to help pay off their loans. They have worked very hard. They have, reduced the amount of debt. They're still carrying debt, but they have less. The program has very little impact on them, and so I'm sure that they are not too happy with all of a sudden new people, new graduates getting this opportunity that they didn't have. So it is not without its controversy. I do think that it's worth taking some steps towards loan forgiveness, but the idea of, one, increasing Pell Grants, secondly, providing as much incentive as you can for people to take public service jobs, that would have more beneficial impact to everybody than just $10,000 loan forgiveness.
What do you recommend parents do to afford college for their children today?
Yeah, you really need to sit down and have a good conversation with their the student about what you anticipate, what do you really want out of college. We see some people, who want their students to go to a U.S. News and World Report highly ranked school. That becomes very important. For those of us in the business of providing higher education, we don't think that the rankings should be given that much consideration for making a decision as where you go. You can look at it for some advisory purposes, but to make a decision that some school is number 10 and another one is number 25 or whatever, we don't think makes a great deal of sense, but we recognize that people are looking at it. I think you have to have the conversation about what opportunities you would like to see following college, and then really talk about finances, the impact that it's going to have not only on the student, but on the family. So the question is to the student, when you graduate, are you comfortable with carrying? Do you think you'll be comfortable carrying a lot of debt for the family? How much debt can you carry right now in order to assist the student in going to college or university? So a real comprehensive conversation about present impact and future opportunities. And so there's a wide range, though, of universities out here, and I think that families would do well to explore that as soon as possible. I mean, I'm talking early in high school career to start thinking about that and weighing the options. Many people also, Claudia, have their children visit the universities. Taking a trip to the universities can be very instructive. I know, for example, in my wife's situation, she, after college, went to medical school, had a choice of where to go. And by visiting a couple of medical schools, she just found the environment different at one, more supportive, more student-oriented than at others, and made the choice on that basis. So undergraduates can do that also.
Do you believe that HBCU schools, their business is booming at this point?
Yep. Well, yeah, the HBCUs. I had the privilege of working for 12 years at Howard University, and Howard is doing extremely well. Though I must say, their tuition is up there in the $40,000 range these days. So, but students are making the choice to go there. They fortunately are able to offer a good scholarship programs, and the quality at the HBCUs is outstanding. It varies. It's not every school, and that could be the same for any public university, but we do have some great high quality HBCUs, and in our state we have 4 HBCUs, and all of them are just doing very well. Morgan, Coppin, Bowie, and UMES, University of Maryland Eastern Shore, have outstanding programs, and fortunately there's been more investment in them recently. Historically, there had been a problem with the state not investing in those universities as much as they should, but currently they have had great investment, and it's paying off in terms of graduates doing wonderful things and programs being offered that are of the highest quality.
Well, each of those HBCUs you mentioned, they have their own legacy, and it's all rich. So it's thrilling to have HBCUs thriving and growing in leaps and bounds.
Oh, absolutely.
So looking at the picture of scholarships, oftentimes parents always are scholarship minded. Sure. And sometimes they know, sometimes they don't know the state scholarships that are available right at their fingertips, such as state delegate and state Senate senatorial scholarships, House of Delegate scholarships.
That's correct. In Maryland, we still have the opportunity for the legislators to give out a certain amount of scholarships. Most of those scholarships, most students use those scholarships to go to the public universities, but I know some that are also using them to go to places like Stevenson University, which is a private institution in Maryland, and it is very helpful that legislators are as involved and interested in furthering higher education as our Maryland legislators are.
So what do you recommend that parents do to afford college for their children today?
One thing that I really strongly recommend is to participate in those state programs that allow you to invest early, to those college account programs that you can start when the child is a little baby, and investing in those programs, and the money just grows until the child is ready for college. So that's making an investment, and invest in those accounts the same way you would invest in other accounts that you're looking to yield a benefit down the road. So that's one thing. But the second thing is start early, to have conversation with the student, and visit if you can. Take as much time as you can. Either visit with the student, or allow the student to go with others to visit colleges. Seeing really is believing in those instances.
Now, before we leave, I just wanted to ask you another question about that student loan forgiveness aspect.
Yeah.
If you were before the president in his presence, and you said, and you had the opportunity to share ways we could tweak his initiative to better improve the outlook for parents, or especially the parents that kind of borrowed against their house or something like that to get their kids through school. What tweaks would you consider? I know you mentioned increasing the Pell Grant.
Yeah.
But any other thoughts there?
I would offer try to create the program. The U.S. Public Health Service, for example, used to have a program that if you participated in working in public hospitals, that you had tuition either diminished or eliminated. And I would think that the federal government could be involved in incentivizing states in some way to offer those types of programs. That would get many more people involved in public service, either in the short run, or some may choose to make it a career. So incentives by the federal government to help the states, I think, would benefit people in the long run.
How can costs get under control, do you think, in the college world?
Well, that for public colleges, we could get under control with more appropriations from state government. For the privates, that becomes a little bit more challenging, because salaries, when you're paying some of these top-notch professors, that you've got to increase money there to pay for those salaries, and that has an impact on tuition. And I guess the other thing is that if you didn't offer as many extra services to students, that you could also control costs. But at this point, what you're seeing in the private universities is still an increase in racial diversity, but a decrease in economic diversity. That is, that what we're seeing in many of the privates is that they are admitting more and more people who can pay full freight, and then a smaller number of people coming in who have strong economic needs. So yes, there's still scholarships available, but you're seeing a lot more the people admitted based on the ability of the student and the family to pay that full cost. So that means that tuition costs are not going to go down dramatically in the private side anytime soon.
Wow, that is really, really helpful for us to know and understand. Thank you so much. You have been so helpful in allowing us to know and understand more about student loan forgiveness. And I thank you so much, University of Baltimore President Kurt Schmoke, for coming on board and sharing with us about educational impact and student loan forgiveness. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me and for dealing with this issue. Take care.
Welcome, Terry Gibson, Senior Director of Legal Shield. Why should we join Legal Shield?
Because it makes perfect sense. You know, when I was introduced to this many years ago, I thought about the fact that you could have unlimited legal counsel. You can have 24/7 emergency access to an attorney. You can have your will done for a fraction of what it will cost you to go through a traditional attorney. That's why you should join Legal Shield.
Well, it says that, according to Investopedia, it is the best online legal services for 2022. Why do you suppose it received that rating?
Well, because it is, because Legal Shield has top-rated attorneys. Legal Shield handles many different areas of law. The company has been around for 50 years, so that's a lot of stability, and they have many success stories.
Well, I understand also that if I wanted to sign up, and I already have Legal Shield, and I can really attest to the fact that it is a great product, especially if you want quick answers to legal questions like, should I use my sick leave for COVID-19 isolation? And preparing a last will and testament. And we're talking about for the low cost of $29.95 per month. So let me repeat that, $29.95 per month. I mean, I don't know of any law firm that could match that.
There is none.
So the 5 Ps, and when we have a checklist for estate planning, all of this is covered for your $29.95 a month.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. Legal Shield, for that $29.95, will prepare for you a standard will, which is your last will and testament, a living will, a healthcare power of attorney, and a durable power of attorney. Those documents alone, normally, as I understand it, comes to around $2,000 a month, but here it's included along with the other service for the $29.95 per month.
Well, what about your spouse?
The plan covers your spouse and your children under the age of 26, living in the same household, and all the members of the family are entitled to the same benefits.
That's marvelous. That's
Yes,
absolutely marvelous.
it
So
is.
if we click this link that is currently on our screen, we would immediately go to this page here, and it says protection for your family, your business, and your personal identity. Those are many options there.
Right. Because Legal Shield has coverage for your family. Legal Shield also has coverage for your business. We have identity theft plans, CDLP plans. I mean, many different plans to cover whatever your needs are in life. So that's why you have here choices.
That's wonderful, because you still can choose a traditional law firm, but for the quick answers to questions, and what about contract review? I find it extremely useful, and I've been practicing for 34 years. It's good to have some access to contracts, which you do get under this plan.
Exactly, absolutely, because all of us probably know of a horror story of someone who signed a contract and had some negative consequences because they signed something they didn't understand. Option to pay an attorney somewhere between $300 and $500 an hour. The average person would probably just